Good afternoon, good evening to others. This is a very exciting day in the new year. It's the first forum of the year. We hardly recovered from our forum in India just before, at the end of the year. And now already we are going to Canada for a new installment. It's the right moment maybe to recall why we started this thing. One of the big reasons was to find a counter movement to the World Economic Forum. And this is the first time, I think, in our history that we are in the same time frame. So we are going head to head. We are super, super small. We are Davids to the Goliath of the greed and speed. But we do believe that if we reach critical mass in this world of people doing the right thing, doing better things, having better practice, more humane, better for the planet, better for people, and still making a difference and still making money as well, a new economy, if you want, the economy of happiness and hope, at one day, we will really become very important as a movement. It's still in its baby shoes, and we will need to work hard and harder and harder. We need all of you, all public, all speakers to say the word, to have more attendances in the future, or maybe do new things. We don't know yet. We would like to grow this forum into the future. We have very high hopes and great ideas for new lectures. And so we're so happy to be together today. And especially because our ambassador is Cynthia Hathaway. And we are family, you can say. She's been in my life for a long, long time. We first met when she was a student at the Design Academy, which I was director of. Then we became teaching colleagues. She was an intern, I think, in the meantime. She visited Paris, our studio with students for a work week, which was very exciting to do new restaurants, I remember. Recently, we got together in her very important endeavor to speak about the future of wool and sheep in Europe, but possibly also, I guess, in Canada. And so our lives has been intertwined over time. And so it's fantastic that it feels so good to be together today. Thank you, Cynthia, that you have been pulling this off. And I cannot wait to see what is your recipes.
Thank you, Lee. Well, welcome everybody to this wonderful edition of World Hope Forum Canada. And I would first like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on, refer to or identify with in this Canadian edition of World Hope Forum. And while we meet on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between First Nations and to improving our own understanding of Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral unceded territories of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land, Canada, home. Please join me in acknowledging beyond this quite brief moment that we recognize the evolving long-term journey and deep commitment it will take to recognize and reconcile with the harms and mistakes of the past, and to consider how we are and can reach in our own way, try to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation, learning, listening, collaboration, and hope. And in so doing, develop respectful relations between humans and the lands, skies, waters, animals, organisms, and spirits of the places we call home. I want to thank Lee for this incredible opportunity, and Philip, the co-founders of World Hope Forum. You have both woven together a beautiful big basket, a place to come together, to inspire and to share stories, and well, just be. I want to thank Ragna Froda for her amazing technical support, but just dealing with all the putting together of this, and Nina Starach as well. And to the incredible guest speakers that have gathered here today. It's just incredibly moving, actually, to welcome you here all today. Some of you have been part of my life. Some of you have been part of my inspirational resource all my life, or just recently. So I'm blessed to have you all here. And of course, I want to thank the audience for being here as well, to share in this community, this big basket of hope. I have to also shout out to two people who unfortunately couldn't make it today on this edition of World Hope Forum. That is the Cree chef, Scott Jonathan Iserhoff of the Pepe Show Company for Indigenous Food Catering and Education. He is based in Edmonton, Alberta, and brings to the table Indigenous food cultures, and through training to be chefs, connect Indigenous youth to their food heritage. And also to Simone Elizabeth Saunders of Simone Elizabeth Textiles. She's based in Calgary, Alberta. Simone creates vibrant and very powerful stories and portraits of Black women, involving cultural investigations, pop culture, and identity through astounding handcrafting and tufting machine and the punch needle. I also just want to quickly give you a very short reason maybe why I am here and the Canadian ambassador. I've lived half of my life in the Netherlands. I'm living there now, but I've lived my other half of my life in Canada. And in both, let's say, coasts, I would say, of Canada. I've lived in Toronto for half of that part of my life. And I've lived on Vancouver Island. So that's on the other side, the West Coast. And I think it's really been part of an experience to even think about now how my work and my being has been influenced by my living in Canada. I think I've experienced by living in Toronto and in East Souk on Vancouver Island, the super urban, and I guess you could call the super rural. So living in Toronto, it's the largest city in Canada. It's a mega city of 2.7 million. And actually in the greater Toronto area, the population now is an astounding 6.4 million people. It's reported to be the most diverse city in the world. Almost half of the city's current population is born outside of Canada, and that is increasing. So I think growing up there, you realize you are surrounded. It's thick with people, side by side, living together in one relatively small place and space, on top of each other, underneath, sideways, you're surrounded. And I think it's interesting to think of the relations that are needed to make it work in this place, to think of the who and what who are a part of that, and also who are left out in the making of a community that is a space of thriving for all. And what are those relations that are needed? Then when I moved to East Souk, which is on Vancouver Island, this is instead of this, 6.4 million, I was living on a farm with a population of about 1,500 around me and 500 houses. I lived on a farm, 150 acres of forested land, which was pulsating with different live entities around me. It was a forested land on the water with giant trees speaking, swaying. There were whales, eagles, cougars, deer. I had 13 amps of power coming into my home that was built in 1950 and is still on the foundation of that tree stump. The house swayed in the wind. The insulation between the walls were newspapers from the era of 1915. I chopped wood. I had water from a well and a reservoir. And this is the place where you really learn to be in relation because you must, to survive well, not to close yourself off and away, but to be with and be in relation to wind and sky and stars and water and forest. Having been there long before you arrived or landed in this place, and will hopefully always be there after you are gone. So I have to say that as a designer, these two spaces really influenced my work. I would say I bring together in my practice in the Netherlands, the urban and rural together as partners, intervening the rural to pierce urban centricity and creating the interventions to do so. I think this is why I'm also called an activist. Bringing together peoples and ideas and expertises that often are siloed from each other, creating public spaces and the commons. By doing so, it really creates these spaces for questioning, debate, widening the table, for making alternatives, creating a multi-knowing space. So I work presently to include other than human abilities as well. That is giant vegetables. I am a giant vegetable grower and a supporter. And that will come up later on in Bradley Worston's presentation. And I also am with sheep doing this. And together with other mobility experts, shepherds, who are experts at practices of transhumance, which are bringing not only sheep and cows and goats from pasture to pasture, but also creating a pasture in between as they go. And this pasture is of balanced relations. So that's all I'm going to say about my work. I wish us a wonderful day today, and I'm sure you will all be inspired by these incredible people brought to this basket. And the